Hello, homeless advocate Eric Jonathan Sheptak coming at you from the Hotel Arboretum in Northeast Washington, D.C., near the intersection of Bladensburg Road and New York Avenue. So, looks like I'm kind of living large here in this nice room. Uh, it's not a homeless shelter. It's not uh, living on the street. But the reason I'm here is because I'm in quarantine, coronavirus quarantine. Um, Turns out that somebody I know, somebody who lived in close proximity to me, tested positive for COVID-19. I'm not sure what his prognosis is, but my last time seeing him was around the 25th or 26th of April. I was told on the evening of April 29th that he had a positive diagnosis, and the following day, April 30th, I was brought here to where I'm being quarantined. Uh, because my last time seeing him was about 4 days before I came here, they subtracted those 4 days from my 2 week quarantine, so I only have to be here for 10 days. Uh, so I'll likely be leaving here on Mother's Day, May 10th. Um, don't forget that is Mother's Day, so your mother's still living, then get her something, call her or something. But anyway, um, now that I'm here in quarantine, the question has been asked to me of several people as to whether or not I'm going to go back to the homeless shelter when I leave here. Um, Turns out that I am one of the working homeless. I've been at my current job for almost 2 years, uh, but I live in DC where the rents are really high, and so a DC minimum wage job, even with the minimum wage being $15 an hour, still doesn't pay the rent. Uh, Rents in DC average over $2,000 a month, probably closer to the $2,500 mark. Uh, and if you make $15 an hour, work full time, that's $2,400 a month before they take out taxes. So you can see how that just doesn't work out. Uh, but anyway, I was contacted by a certain housing agency here in DC around November 20th of 2019. That was more than 5 months ago. They're really dragging ass when it comes to getting everything done so that I can move into this affordable housing. And that wasn't a COVID-19 cough. That was just a throat clearing cough. But they've been taking over 5 months thus far to complete the process. And had they completed the process within 2 months, then that would have predated all of the COVID-19 measures. As a matter of fact, they'd been working on my housing for almost 4 months when DC began to take COVID-19 measures. I began doing interviews about how COVID-19 is affecting the homeless in early March, right around March 9th. First article that I appeared in concerning COVID-19 in the homeless community came out on March 11th. That was a WAMU article, WAMU. Uh, that's American University's radio station, and they issued a print article on their website in which I'm featured on March 11th. But that said, DC's COVID-19 hype began in early March, and that was almost 4 months after I had begun the housing process. I went back to New Jersey, to Atlantic City, and got my birth certificate, a new copy of my birth certificate from Atlantic City. That was like early December. I've given the people everything they've asked me for. It's now 5 months and counting, and they still haven't completed the process. And when I leave this quarantine on May 10th, which by the way is being paid for by DC government, then I'll probably end up going back to the shelter. I did ask the case manager in the housing program, and she said that there's no way she can expedite the process to complete my application process. So I'll be going back to the environment. I shouldn't say it threatened my health because I'm not sick. I'm not having any symptoms, but the environment, the dangerous environment, in terms of being in close proximity to other people in the homeless shelter. So even in the face of a crisis, they can't seem to get the lead out of their ass. But that said, I have a few things written down here to make sure that I don't go too long and that I cover all important points. So, how are things going here at the hotel? Well, things have been running relatively smoothly. I mean, there's not an awful lot that can go wrong. When I entered on April 30th, there were people here from DC government's Department of Human Services. They came and they opened the bedroom door for me and would not give me the key card, which means that if I leave out and the door locks behind me, then I have to contact them in order to get back in, and they'll know that I broke the quarantine. So here I am. But this morning, either they forgot to bring my breakfast or somebody stole it. Breakfast, well, yesterday was my first time getting breakfast here. Today's May 2nd. I came on the afternoon of April 30th. So yesterday's breakfast got here around 7:30 a.m. This morning, I didn't actually wake up until 9 o'clock. So I looked out the door to see if breakfast was sitting in front of my door, and it was not. Normally when they bring a meal, they knock on the door, and then they leave the food outside the door. But when I got up at 9, breakfast was not there. I did call downstairs, and they said breakfast had in fact been served. They said call back in 5 minutes, and when I called back in 5 minutes, nobody answered the phone. but there you have it. So I didn't get breakfast, but I have eaten lunch. It is the afternoon now, and I have eaten lunch today. But let me see what else I've got written down here. So the process for receiving goods. I'm supposed to be able to have stuff brought to me while I'm here. They do have a process in place, a no contact process. I was told when I did intake that only your case manager can bring stuff to you. And I said, well, the only case manager that I have is the person who's supposed to be connecting me to affordable housing. And they said, well, that's good enough. That's who you need to contact. I contacted the case manager, and she says, oh, I don't do that. And so it turns out that DC government's Department of Human Services gave all case managers a task, but didn't tell the case managers. So they don't know that it's their job to cater to the needs of their quarantined clientele. So a little breakdown in communication there. Um, so I got somebody else to bring some stuff to me, and that person does do a form of case management. Uh, he he didn't know that they were going to ask for credentials, so when he arrived, they asked for credentials. He's like, what do you mean? What do you need? What do you want to see? And the person who said that to him couldn't give him a very clear answer. I've since called that person, and they told me that what he needs is a work badge, something that proves where he works at. He didn't have anything with him at the moment that identified him as a case manager, and they let him bring the stuff anyway. And I'm glad that they did, but they said that he can't do it again. So I have enough cigarettes to last me throughout the entire quarantine. And I have a few other items, a few TV dinners and other things that I gave him money to buy that I cash apped over to him. Being a working homeless person, I of course have money. And there are other homeless people who just don't have even the money that I have. So they're in a worse situation. Even if they had somebody who was willing to shop for them, that person might not be willing to come out of their own pocket to pay for the goods. So I guess I should count my blessings. But let me see what else I got here. So I still have to get DHS to fix that process for receiving goods. But in terms of counting my blessings, I have to say that I have two big beds in here. It's just the one of me. And I've got a nice little TV that I can watch. They have it muted right now. But I also have a very clean shower, as opposed to the shelter having showers with mold and mildew in them. So every time you take a shower, you have to worry that you might breathe in some toxic mold. But anyway, I got a few little creature comforts here, and I don't have to deal with what other people want to watch on the TV. I can watch what I want to watch. And so it's not terribly uncomfortable. But let me also say this. I work for a company called Gotta Go Now. We do event rentals. Tents, tables, chairs, porta potties, temporary fencing, sound equipment, a few other things. Anything you'd use for an outdoor event, such as a block party or a wedding. And so we're not doing an awful lot of work these days with coronavirus and with large events being canceled. But people always got to go. And so the porta potty portion of the business is still functioning. So normally this time of year, I'd be working 60, 70 hours a week. I said I've been there for a couple of years, so I've seen how it goes. And the way it is right now, when I'm not in quarantine, I'm doing like 10 or 20 hours a week as opposed to 60 or 70. So it's cut into my pay quite a bit. And if I couldn't afford housing in DC last year, then I surely can't afford it this year. And so my hours are greatly reduced. But it turns out that my company got some of the work around the homeless tent cities. So A couple of government agencies are renting porta potties and hand wash stations for various homeless tent cities around DC. And our company does have hand wash stations, but they aren't being rented from us. Uh, but government is renting porta potties from us for at least 9 homeless tent cities. I need to get something to drink, but I don't want to stop. And so before I came to quarantine, I was actually going around to these different tent cities and servicing the porta potties there. It's kind of a neat connection. I've been advocating for DC's homeless for a number of years, and now here I am doing paid work. That brings me right back to the homeless community. I should say that the homeless really appreciate these porta potties and hand wash stations. They're not vandalizing them the way that construction workers do. Construction workers so often like to write on the walls with marker. Sometimes they cut the walls. The walls are just some cheap plastic, just meant to block the view. But anyway, the homeless are actually not vandalizing our units. So in some instances, the units do look highly used, but that's different than being vandalized. And you may have a tank that's full, and there may be a little bit of understandable filth associated with use, but they don't vandalize them. And for the most part, the units still look very clean when I return to service them yet again. And I'm actually quite impressed with how well the homeless take care of our equipment. I've actually had some homeless people tell me how handy these things are when there's no pandemic and we're not putting these porta potties by the homeless tent cities. The homeless may have to walk 2, 3, 4 blocks to find a restaurant or store where they can use the restroom. An establishment that won't kick them out and tell them that they can't use the restroom. And so now most of the porta potties are actually right by the tent city. They don't even have to walk 1 block. In another instance, they do have to walk a block. Whoever ordered the toilet told us to put it a block away from the tent city. Don't ask me why, but we follow orders. But in any instance, I have met homeless people who are living in tents who are handicapped, and they are really appreciative of these porta potties. It just makes their life so much easier, but I hate to say it. Going back to normal means they are going to lose that luxury of having a clean, frequently serviced porta potty right near them. Let me see. Yeah. And I actually did pretty good there. I moved right into my next point without even realizing it. So other aspects of going back to normal, or the new normal as it may be, means that I'll lose my hazard pay. See, right now I'm getting hazard pay because I'm an essential worker, and so our prices got raised temporarily so that the workers could be paid extra because our services are needed even during the pandemic. And it's a nice raise, and I'm gonna miss it when we go back to normal. Just like the homeless are gonna miss the porta potties being right there by their tent cities. So let me see. Restaurants and other businesses, you're gonna start seeing homeless people again because, like I said, the porta potties are not gonna be by the tent cities anymore. So you businesses, the homeless aren't gone for good. When things go back to normal, you'll start seeing them in your business again. But then there's a point that I kind of touched on earlier. You see, going back to normal means that any of the homeless who got quarantined, like I'm quarantined right now, they're going to return to shelters. They're going to return to their tents on the streets. You would kind of hope that at least the ones who got quarantined would get connected to housing, especially if they began the process of getting into housing more than 5 months ago. But even for those who didn't, there's got to be some way to expedite their housing, or it's even been suggested to me that you keep them in the hotel until their housing comes through, but that you, at least with the ones who were removed from the homeless environment, don't send them back to that environment, but keep them in a hotel room or some similar setting until their housing comes through. But I don't think that's how DC government is thinking. So people will be going back to the streets, and it's just the sad truth. Let me see what else I haven't already covered. So I covered that, and oh man, so check this out. I was told by the affordable housing program that I could move into an apartment unit that cost up to $2,598 a month. I don't know how they choose these weird numbers instead of just saying 2,600. But in any instance, that's more than I make in a month, on an average month anyway. And so when you do the math, you actually have to make over $90,000 a year in order to pay that kind of rent per month. Strangely enough, though, the program rules state that I can't make more than $25,000 a year. If I make more than $25,000 a year, I don't qualify for the affordable housing program. And that just seems so weird to me, because for the average DC rent, which exceeds $2,000 a month, and if you're not going to pay more than 1/3 of your income in rent, you would have to make in excess of $6,000 a month, right around $7,000 a month, in order to afford the average DC rental. That comes out to about $84,000 a year. That's, if you're just working 2,000 hours a year full time, that's $42 an hour that you'd have to make. Now that's just some rough back of the envelope math. I'm sure that the exact math is not that far different, but if I make more than $25,000 a year, I can't get the housing. Now, DC's minimum wage is $15 an hour. Times 2,000 hours a year, that's $30,000. So if you're a full-time minimum wage worker in DC, you make too much money to qualify for the affordable housing program. And that's really weird. I think they should raise the bar. It should be at least $40,000. If you make up to $40,000, then you can qualify for the affordable housing program. Okay, and I don't know what kind of madness caused them to set the bar that low. But I should also say this, that it's kind of idiotic that the city even chooses to go with affordable housing programs as opposed to favoring legislation that forces landlords to keep the rents affordable. And sure, the word affordable is ambiguous, but simply put, DC's minimum wage is $15 an hour. If you're working full time, you make $30,000 a year. You can pay $10,000 a year in rent. That comes out to about $833 a month. And therefore, there should be some legislation that requires DC government to first find out how many DC residents are making a minimum wage or slightly above it. And then they should come up with legislation that forces landlords to provide at least or a number of $800 a month units that is at least as high as the number of DC residents working for DC's minimum wage. So it doesn't make sense that you may have 10,000, 20,000 DC workers who are working for the city's minimum wage, and yet you don't have at least that many units that run right around $800 a month that they can afford. And therefore, you work in DC for DC's minimum wage, but then to get housing that you can afford, you have to go to Prince George's County, Maryland, right next door. And the units over there that run for $800 a month, if there are any, they're few and far between. So it's like you work in the city, but you can't afford to live in the city. And that doesn't make any sense to me. So they need to do some research, need to figure out how many DC residents are making DC's minimum wage, and they need to have at least that many units across the city that run for $800 a month. Definitely not more than $850. But let me see if I forgot anything else. Okay, I think I covered everything. I'll leave it there.